Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah shir. So this shir is really a continuation of the previous shir. Today's daf is Pei Beis Amud Aleph in Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, but we used the length of a whole shir in the previous shir to finish Pei Aleph Amud Beis. So now I'm going to try to quickly move through the vast majority of Pei Beis Amud Aleph so that we don't fall behind on the pace. So we pick up today on Pei Aleph Amud Beis, the bottom line in the Mechaber, middle of the line, Siman Shin Aleph, near the end of Sif Chav Hey, says the Mechaber. Umutar Latzeis B'Kamei Mumcha, you're allowed to go out on Shabbos wearing a proven, effective kameya, and we've discussed at length what it takes for a kameya to become a kameya mumcha. Says the Mechaber, this is true, that you're allowed to go out with such a kameya. Loishno shel ksav oishel ikarim. When we speak about a kameya, as we've mentioned previously, a kameya could be an amulet that contains a text, or it could be an amulet that's formed out of a bundle of herbs or different kinds of grasses. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah, the bottom line of Pei Aleph Amud Beis. Mishnah Berurah is cut in Kaf Aleph, Shel Ksav. We've been discussing mostly at length kameyas that contain paper with a text written on it. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Shel Ksav, Ve'imhu mikisvei hakodesh. Sometimes, apparently, they would make a kameya and they would have kisvei kodesh, maybe psukim, etc., or shemos, written, names of Hashem, written in the Kameya. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Imhu Mikisvei HaKodesh, if the Kameya contains Kisvei HaKodesh, also Lotzeis Boil Rishus HaRabim, you would not be allowed to go out with it to Rishus HaRabim on Shabbos, El In Kein Mechupa Ba'oyer Oy Davar Acher. In order to go out with it into Rishus HaRabim on Shabbos, it would have to be covered with some kind of a leather cover or some other kind of cover, because if it doesn't have a cover on it, if somebody goes out into Rishus HaRabim on Shabbos wearing a kameya, and the kameya has the name of Hashem, or it has a pasuk written in it, then what happens if that fellow has to go to the Beis HaKisei while he's out in Rishus HaRabim? And remember that back in the day, the Beis HaKisei was out in the Sadeh, it was out in the field. So this person is walking, he needs to go to the Beis HaKisei. He can't take the kameya with him into the Beis HaKisei because it has kisvei kodesh in it, so he's going to have to take it off. If he takes it off, now he might come to carry a dalet amos in Rishus HaRabim. Now this is the same problem that we saw earlier, why you're not allowed to go out wearing tefillin into Rishus HaRabim on Shabbos. Same problem. If this person is wearing tefillin and he needs to go to the Beis HaKisei, he might come to take his tefillin off and carry them dalet amos in Rishus HaRabim. Continues the Chavetz Chaim and he says, however, what if this individual, he's wearing this kameya, and without the kameya, he's a chayla sheyesh by sakana. So, we talk about these kameyas and we wonder about them. You want to know the level of effectiveness of these kameyas. Here you have a person who with the kameya, he's okay. But should he take the kameya off, he becomes a chayla sheyesh by sakana. He becomes an ill individual who's dangerous. Says the Chavetz Chaim, if we're talking about such a person with such a kameya, da'oz ain't tzarech lahasiram b'chol gavdi mutalotzes. The whole problem over here, going out with the kameya that contains kisvei kodesh, is that you might come to take it off in Rishus HaRabim and carry it dalet amos. But if we're talking about somebody who, if he takes off the kameya, he's going to become a chayla sheyesh by sakana, he doesn't have to take off the kameya if he goes into the Beis HaKisei. He needs to keep wearing the kameya. The kameya is his pacemaker. So he doesn't have to take it off. It's pekuach nefesh. He's allowed to go into the Beis HaKisei with the kameya, with kisvei HaKodesh, because to take it off would be pekuach nefesh. Ice cut and kuf beis, the Mechaber said you could have a kameya made out of text, so it could be a ksav, or you could be a kameya made out of ikarim. Says the Mishnah Berurah, kuf beis shel ikarim shel sharoshe simanin. You could have some kind of kameya that's made out of herbs, spices, etc., etc. Okay, let's go weiter over here. Top line in the Mechaber, Pei Beis Amud Aleph. So continues the Mechaber, and he says, you're allowed to go out with the Kamea Mumcha, Bein B'choyle Sheyesh by Sakana, whether we're dealing with the Choyle Sheyesh by Sakana, Bein B'choyle She'ein by Sakana. If the Kamea is a Kamea Mumcha, you don't have to be a Choyle Sheyesh by Sakana in order to wear it outside of Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos, because if it's Kamea Mumcha and you're a Choyle, so then the Kamea is a Takshit. It's not a Masui. So you could go out with it. You don't have to be a Choyle Sheyesh by Sakana. Continues the Mechaber, and he says, also, also, this heter of wearing a kamea mumcha, the word nichpe means somebody who had a seizure, like an epileptic seizure. So literally what the Mechaber is saying over here is, don't think that the only time you're allowed to wear a kamea mumcha is if you're already suffering an ailment. You're an epileptic and you already had seizures. So now you want to wear the kamea because the kamea will prevent future seizures. Says the Mechaber, no. This heter does not only apply to somebody who's already suffering the seizures, and now he wants to wear the kamea outside of Rosh Hashanah Shabbos to prevent future seizures. The truth is, you could wear this kamea even if you had never struck with the ailment. Ella, shehu mimishpachas nichbin, he comes from a family that's predisposed to these type of seizures. V'terleu shelo yechazenu, and he's wearing this kamea mumcha as a prophylactic, right? So you have a person who comes from a family where the predisposition of that family, they have a family history of getting this ailment that gives seizures, and there's a kamea mumcha that prevents the seizures. So you might think, maybe the heter to wear the kamea is only if you've already been struck by this ailment, if you've already suffered these seizures in the past, so then there's a heter to wear the kamea mumcha to solve the problem and to prevent the seizures. Says the Mechaber, no. If you come from a family that has a predisposition to this ailment, then you could wear this kamea mumcha outside on Shabbos as a prophylactic to prevent you from ever getting the ailment. That's what the Mechaber means here. Continues the Mechaber, third line down. V'koishroi umatiroi b'rishus harabim. You're wearing this kamea around your neck on Shabbos. Maybe it needs to be adjusted every now and then. So says the Mechaber, you could untie it and you could retie it outside in Rishus Harabim. Now the first thing that we have to remember over here is, when we're talking about tying and untying on Shabbos, we must be talking about a kesher she'eno shel kayama. It's not a permanent knot. It's a knot that's made to open and close very easily, because to tie a kesher shel kayama on Shabbos, that would be an isser. You're not allowed to do that on Shabbos. So clearly we're talking about a kesher she'eno shel kayama. Then when the Mechaber says over here that you could untie the kamea on Shabbos in Rishus Harabim, obviously you're not allowed to untie it so that basically you're taking the kamea off and walk Dal Rabbos in Rishus Harabim. The point of the heter that the Mechaber is giving you over here, we'll see this in the Mishnah Berurah, is that the understanding is that this fellow is not going to walk Daled Amos in Rishus Harabim because he needs the kamea. For him to walk in Rishus Harabim without the kamea puts himself at risk of the illness. So the understanding is, this is what the Mechaber is telling you. The reason he's allowed to tie it and untie it in Rishus Harabim on Shabbos is exactly because we're not afraid that he's going to come to walk Daled Amos in Rishus Harabim without the kamea on. But he cannot tie the kamea onto a bracelet. A share is a bracelet. Or onto a ring. And go out to Rishus Harabim wearing the kamea. That way, remember, the whole heter of the kamea is that the kamea is a takshit for the ill person. Now that's true if he's wearing it because of his illness. Now, what if somebody wanted to take this kamea and he's not ill and he doesn't come from a family that's struck by him? No, he says, what do you mean? I learned in Dirshu that you're allowed to go out with a kamea. No, if you're not sick and you don't need the kamea, you're not allowed to go out with the kamea. Why? Because for you, it's not a takshit. The only reason it's considered a takshit for the ill person is because this is what we would call a functional takshit. It's not that it's a piece of jewelry. It's not an adornment. It's something that serves the body because it's preventing the body from becoming ill, but it's not really a malbush. So we call it a tachshit, not a malbush. But it's that subset of tachshitim that we call functional tachshitim. But if you're not ill, so then in no way is this a tachshit. Now, if the person is ill and he wants to go out with the kameya, but instead of wearing the kameya around his neck, he wants to take the kameya and hang it from a bracelet like a charm. Or she wants to go ahead and affix it to her ring and go out with the kameya that way. That you can't do, because then people are going to look and people are going to say, hey, wait a second, you're not going out with this because you need it for sickness purposes. You're going out, you're trying to make a tachshit out of it. You're trying to make a charm out of it. But if you're not ill, it's not a charm. Okay. I don't think there's any Mishnah Berurah actually what we just did. No, there isn't. So let's move along to Sif Chavav. 4 lines down near the end of the line, says the Mechaber. We're talking here about a kameya that's mumcha, a kameya that's not mumcha. In the previous year, we spoke at length about a writer who's a mumcha, writer of kameyas. Now, exactly how does this work? Do you have like a heksher organization that when somebody becomes a kaisiv mumcha, he's a mumcha to write certain kameyas, does he get a certificate? Does he get a shingle to hang outside his door? Says the Mechaber, Nemon loimer haroife alatzmai shehu mumcha. You go to a roife, and the roife tells you, oh, you're having seizures? I know how to write a kameya for your ailment, and I am a mumcha. I'm a writer. I'm a mumcha to write kameyas. So my kameya, you could even wear it outside of Rosh Hashanah on Shabbos. I'm a mumcha. I cured 3 people with 3 different kameyas, 3 different people with 3 different kameyas. So I'm a mumcha writer. Could you trust him? Says the Mechaber, yes. Neman loimer haroifi alatzmai shehu mumcha. Says the Mishnah Berurah Kov Gimel loimer v'hu adin sheneman ala kameya loimer shehi mumchis. Or alternately, the doctor might not say that he is a writer who's a mumcha. Maybe he'll open up his drawer, he'll take out a kameya, and he'll say, this kameya is a kameya mumcha. This kameya cured already 3 times, so this kameya is a mumcha. I'm not a mumcha, but this kameya is a mumcha. You're allowed to trust him. There's no reason that you have to suspect the roife that he's trying to trip you up, and he's trying to be machshel you chas v'chalila to me mechal Shabbos. And I imagine that this falls also under the rubric of Eid Echad Neman B'Yisurin. You're allowed to trust an Eid Echad, a single witness, is trusted when it comes to prohibitions. So over here you have an Eid Echad. He assumedly knows the provenance of this kameya. He's attesting to you that it's a kameya mumcha, or he's attesting to you that he's a writer who's a mumcha. You're allowed to trust him. Let's move along to Sif Chav Zayin. 5 lines down, middle of the line, says the Mechaber. Yoitzin bebeitzas hachargoil. You could go out with the egg of a locust. Ubishain shalshual, or the tooth of a fox. Uvemasmer hatzolov, or with the nail that was used when somebody was basically crucified. You could go out with the nail. Okay, why would you do these things? Well, the answer is that there's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah, and the Gemara talks about these items were known to have a therapeutic effect for certain things. So the Beitzas HaChargoil was something that was known to have a therapeutic effect for an earache. The Shein Shel Shuel, the tooth of the fox, was known to have a therapeutic effect for insomnia. And the Masmer HaTzoluv somehow was known to have a therapeutic effect for inflammations. So, okay. Says the Mechaber, Yoitzin bebeitz hachargol b'sheit shashul of a masmarat solov. You're allowed to go out with these things. Now, over here, we're not only talking Hilchos Shabbos. Continues the Mechaber, you're allowed to go out with these substances, bein b'choil, both during the week, bein b'Shabbos, and on Shabbos. Now, we understand what the Chiddush is by Shabbos. By Shabbos, we're saying, since these things have a therapeutic effect, they're considered the same as a Kamei Mumcha. Since they're a Kamei Mumcha, they're considered a Takshit. They're not considered a Masui. So you're allowed to go out with them on Shabbos. Okay, I got that. What are we talking over here that you're allowed to do this during the week? Why would you not be allowed to do this during the week? Explains the Mechaber. Ve'ein by mishum darkei ha'emoiri. We don't have to worry that this falls under the rubric of what's called darkei ha'emoiri. The pasuk says, you're not allowed to do things that the Einam Yehudim did. You're not allowed to do the superstitions and the practices of the Amorim, of the Einam Yehudim. You're not allowed to do those. We learn that out from other Gemaras, the Rishonim give a different source. But whatever it is, we learn out from Psukim that you're not allowed to do Darkei HaAmori. Now, the thing with Darkei HaAmori is the reason Darkei HaAmori are Aser is because we don't want Yidden following non-Jewish practices. A lot of non-Jewish, and this, by the way, is true even if the non-Jewish practices are not strictly speaking rooted in Avodah Zarah. If they're rooted in Avodah Zarah, it's even a bigger problem. But even if they're not rooted in Avodah Zarah, we don't want Yidden following Darkei HaEmori, the strange things that the Amorim did. That's B'chukei Lo Yisei Leichu. Now, the thing is, though, items like this, the Beit Zachargel, the Shein Shul, the Masmar Tzolov, these were proven and they were known to have a therapeutic effect. Since we know that they have a therapeutic effect, when somebody goes and does them, when they see somebody going out with a Shein Shul, it's not, oh, what are you doing Darkei Amori? No, it's not Darkei Amori. Taking antibiotics is not Darkei Amori. Taking 2 aspirins is not a Darkei Amori. Taking ibuprofen is not Darkei Amori. It's refuah. That's what it is. And those who know that these things are able to accomplish refuah. So a Shein Shul is a therapy for insomnia. A Beit Zachargel is a therapy for an earache. Darkei Amori is when we don't know that it has a therapeutic effect. So the Einam Yehudim have some kind of superstition, they have some kind of a minig, that when you have a certain thing, you do a certain thing. That's Darkei Amori. It's not refuah. It's, I don't know what it is. It's gobbledygook. But it's Darkei Amori. We don't want you doing Darkei Amori. So that's what the Mechaber says here. Yoitzid bebeit zachargel b'sheit shul v'masrat tzolov bein b'chol bein b'shabbos ve'ein boi mishum Darkei Amori ve'chein. And similarly says the Mechaber, b'chol davar shehu mishum refuah. Anything that is known to have a therapeutic effect. You see, the words of the Mechaber literally mean anything that's being done for refuah. V'chein b'chol davar, anything, shehu mishum refuah, that is for refuah. What does it mean that it's for refuah? So what's very illuminating is the lashon of the Rambam. The Rambam in Perek Yutes Halacha Yud Gimel, the Rambam writes, his words are, v'hu sheyoimru haroifim shehu moil. If the doctors say that it's a refuah, so that's what the Gemara means. This is a psak of Abaya and Rava in the Gemara. When the Gemara says that if it's a davar shehu mishum refuah, what the Gemara means is if the roifim, if the doctors know that this has a therapeutic effect, it's not that every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the street has to know that it's a therapeutic effect. It's not that everybody in shul has to know that it's a therapeutic effect. If the doctors recognize and know that this is something that has a therapeutic effect, then you're allowed to do it, and there's no isser of Darkei HaAmori. That's what the Mechaber says. The V'chein b'chol davar shehu mishum refuah is mutter, and there's no worry of Darkei HaAmori. Says the Mishnah Cotton Kov Dalet, Bebeit Zachargel. You're allowed to go out the egg of a locust to Chagav. A chargel is a locust. V'ayin b'Gemara, take a look at the Gemara, Shabbos Samach Zayin Amud Aleph, Lamai Avdi Kol Dvarim Elu. What are these things used for? And I already told you. Ubizmanom, and back in the day of the Mishnah and the Gemara, Hayu Elu Dvarim Ismachu L'Refuah. These things were known that they accomplish refuah. V'yesh lehem din kamei amumacha. So then for Shabbos purposes, they have the din of a kamei amumacha, and they're a takshit. V'shari lotzeis kishein tluyin olav, and therefore you could go out with them in Rishus Harabim on Shabbos when they are affixed to you. Certainly you can't go out holding them in your hand. You're never allowed to go out with a takshit carrying it in your hand. And these are takshitim. But if they're affixed to your person in some way, you could go out with them because they are considered a takshit. Let's go weiter. Aval, says the Mechaber, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 lines from the top here on Pei Beis Amud Aleph, beginning of the line. Aval, however, im oise maisa, if you do an act, if you perform some kind of action, ve'ein nikar by shehu misha refuah, and this is not known, when I say known, again, like by the doctors, by those in the know, ve'ein nikar by shehu misha refuah, this is not known to be a refuah, also b'shem darkei ha'mayri. That's also because of darkei ha'mayri. So like I explained, to do something that the Einam Yehudim do, which is kind of like an old wives' tale, but it's a minig by the Einam Yehudim that you suffer from a certain ailment, this is what you do, but it's not. The doctors look and they go, it's not a refuah. And now you want to go ahead and you want to do it. It makes you feel good. At least I'm doing something. No, you can't do that because that's darkei ha'mayri. So if you do an act, if you perform an action, and there's a reason why the Mechaber is using those words. Ve'ein nikar b'yishu mishum refuah, and it's not known that this is a refuah, also mishum darkei ha'mayri, that would be also because of darkei ha'mayri. Says the Mishnah Berurah Kofei, ve'ein nikar b'yishu mishum refuah. What does that mean, says the Mishnah Berurah? Hainu she'ein nikar she'il refuah. It's not recognized that this causes a refuah. V'hadam mutter b'dvarim hanal. The reason why the Beit Zachargel, the Shein Shel Shul, the Masmarat Tzolov, the reason those are mutter and they're not darkei ha'mayri is kevan sheyamru hayodim shehu l'refuah. Because the yodim, those who are in the know, they will tell you that this is a refuah. So again, it doesn't mean that everybody knows that this is a refuah. It means that if you ask a doctor, the doctor will tell you, yeah, Beit Zachargel, that cures earaches. So then it's known as a refuah, and it's not darkei ha'mayri. Mitzad skula, heavy knicker. That's called nicker. Let's go weiter in the Mechaber. Says the Mechaber, Aval. So we are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 lines down. Last word on the line in the Mechaber. Aval. Kol lachash, an incantation. See, before this, the Mechaber was talking about when you do a maisa, when you're performing an act. Over there, the Mechaber said, you want to do something, if we know that it's a refuah, you're allowed to do it, it's not darkei ha'mayri. But if it's not known to be a refuah, it's also because of darkei ha'mayri. Now, the Mechaber contrasts that to a case where you're not actually doing anything. Aval kol lachash, to say an incantation, amira ba'alma, merely verbalizing something, that's not called performing an action. Avakol lachash mutter, that's always mutter. So you want to say an incantation because you heard that this incantation will solve your headache. So you don't have to worry about darkei ha'mayri. Even though you ask a doctor will go, doesn't matter. It's not darkei ha'mayri anyway. Kol lachash mutter. The only time a lachash, okay, qualify a little bit what I said here. The only time a lachash is aser is if the lachash has been tried and you know that it doesn't work. If you know that a lachash doesn't work, you can't use a lachash. But if a lachash you don't know, maybe yeah, maybe no, then it's mutter. Says the Mechaber weiter, v'yesh mi shechashash b'chol kameh she'ena mumcha mishum darkei ha'mayri. There are those, the Berurah brings this down in the name of Rabbeinu Yonah, there are those that say that any kameya that is not proven effective, any kameya that's not mumcha, you're not allowed to use because it's darkei ha'mayri. Now the Mishnah Berurah is going to ask a bomb kasha on this. But, I mean, right away, we've been learning until now, if it's a kameh mumcha, you're allowed to go out with it on Shabbos. If it's not a kameh mumcha, you're not allowed to go out with it on Shabbos. We never had a discussion about darkei ha'mayri. Sounds very much like even if a kameh is not a kameh mumcha, you're allowed to use it during the week. And the truth is, I would think that in a way it has to be that way. Otherwise, how does a kameh ever become mumcha? The first time you write a kameh, it's not mumcha, right? So how did the first person use it? The first person had to use it be'isser? The first person had to be an Eini Yehudi? So we're trusting now an Eini Yehudim? I don't know. But the Mishnah Berurah is going to ask another kasha. That is that there's a Mishnah that seems to imply very strongly that a kameh she'ena mumcha you're allowed to use. This Rabbeinu Yonah is saying, a kameh she'ena mumcha, it's darkei ha'mayri. You're not allowed to use it. So that's the Rabbeinu Yonah here. V'yesh mi shechashash b'chol kameh she'ena mumcha mishum darkei ha'mayri. Says the Mishnah Berurah, ois cotton, Kufov, kol lachash mutter. Any incantation the Mechaber said you're allowed to use. We don't know that this incantation accomplishes anything. You're still allowed to use this incantation during the week, and there's no Isser of Darkei or Amori. Since we do know that there are incantations that do cause refuah, so we say, okay, maybe this is one of them. That makes it enough that, it's known that incantations work. Once it's known that incantations work, so you have incantation, you don't know, it's an it, you're allowed to do it, and it's not also Mishum Darkei Amori. The only Isser is to use an incantation that we know does not work. That would be Darkei Ha'amori. We brought down to Rabbeinu Yoina, who says B'chol kameh she'eina mumcha, that any kameh that's not a kameh mumcha has a problem of Darkei Ha'amori. Heksha b'Berurah. The Berurah asks a barn kasha. Hatanan is a beferish Mishnah. The ein yotzid b'kameh she'eina mumcha, that you're not allowed to go out with Shabbos with a kameh that's not mumcha. Mashma, the distinct implication is habachol, but during the week, sharper dummy. You could use a kameh that's not a mumcha. So how do you understand this Rabbeinu Yoina? V'ayin b'levushay srad shedilchach liyashev. The levushay srad goes to pains to try to end for this Rabbeinu Yoina. V'machaylu davar sheish b'chash sakana. Certainly says the Chavetz Chaim, if we're dealing with an ailment that has any angle of sakana, near the l'kulei alma shari b'chal gavni, everybody would say that it is mutter. Let's move on to Sif Chav Ches. Says the Mechaber. Somebody who has some kind of a wound on the bottom of his foot. So he ties a coin over that makkah. Lahagain, in order to protect the makkah, so that his foot should not disturb it. It shouldn't become abraded. And the coin also has a therapeutic effect. We're going to see in the Mishnah Berurah that the Mechaber is being very dafka over here. What does the Mechaber say? The Mechaber is talking about somebody who has some kind of a wound on his foot. And what he wants to do is, he wants to tie a coin. He's tying a coin over this wound that's on the bottom of his foot. Now, why is he tying the coin on? So the first benefit of the coin is that it covers up the wound. So now when you walk, your foot is not coming into contact with the ground, or if you're wearing a shoe, it's not coming into contact with the bottom of your shoe. There's a barrier. There's something covering the wound. That's one benefit of the coin. But that's a passive benefit. But then says the Mechaber, there's another benefit. And that is that the coin itself has a therapeutic effect on the wound. What is this therapeutic effect? We're showing them talk about it. Some say that the chaluda, somehow the oxidation or something of the coin, some aspect of the metal, somehow it helps the wound. So the Mechaber is being very careful over here. He's telling you want to have this matbeya on the wound on your foot for a dual benefit. One is a passive benefit, it protects the wound. The other one is a more proactive benefit, which is that it actually provides a therapeutic effect. The gamu marape mutter lotzei, you're allowed to go out with it. Says the Mishnah Kuf Ches. The gamu marape. The Mechaber wants this dual benefit. Says the Mishnah Hu Meloshen HaTorah. The Mechaber pulled this language from the Torah. Umashma mizeh, and the implication of this language is debedavar she'enoi marape. If the coin would not have a therapeutic effect, if the only benefit would be the passive one, that is protecting the wound, aser, then it would be aser to go out with this coin tied over the wound. And the truth is, says the Mishnah Berurah, this shouldn't take us by surprise. In this, the Mechaber is going very much according to what he said earlier in Sif Chav Beis Ayin Sham. And that's because in Sif Chav Beis, on Pei Amid Beis, what the Mishnah Berurah said was, you could go out with a bandage or an absorbent gauze over your wound. Why, said the Mechaber? Lefi shehem merapim. Because they have a therapeutic effect. Because they promote healing. The Mechaber did not say that you go out with the bandage because it protects the wound. He said you can go out with the bandage because it promotes healing. So you see that this is the Mechaber L'Shitasai, who says that you want to go out wearing something over your wound. It has to be something that actually promotes healing. Aval, however, continues the Mishnah Berurah here. Bel Yerabah heavy b'shem kama paiskim. The El Yerabah brings down from any paiskim. Ta'afilim eino merape. Even if this coin would not have a therapeutic effect, elo she'oisik de lahagen mitzar. It's only protecting you from suffering. Gam ken muter lotzeis bai. It also would be muter, because if it's protecting, that's a malbush, right? That's one of the things clothing does. It protects the guf. So the El Yerabah wants to say, if it protects, you can go out with it. You don't have to. It doesn't have to have a therapeutic effect. The and the truth is, if you look back to Sif Chav Beis and you look at the Mishnah Berurah's Kat Nayin Zayin, Masha Kasav de B'Shem Agra, we brought down the Gra, who says the Dasa Rambam Ugam Kenachi, that the Rambam also holds like this, because we saw over there that the Rambam says if you want to put a rope or a string over a wound to protect the wound so that it shouldn't become abraded, that's mutter. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Valkain, therefore, if somebody gets a cut on his finger on Shabbos, and he wants to put a piece of cloth over it, so that the cut shouldn't get abraded by his clothing. So he's not putting on this rag in order to promote healing. He's putting it on to protect it, so that the wound shouldn't get abraded. You're allowed to go out with it, because that Shitas Rambam, says the Gra. Miu Yaisatayv, however, it would be better, says the Mishnah Berurah, is a smartut. Use a rag. Don't use something choshev. Because the Pri Megadim says if it's a rag, then it'll be bottle. Because a rag, a throwaway piece of cloth, it has no cheshivas, and therefore it will be very easily become bottle to you. And then you're not carrying it. You go out with something choshev, you use something that's not disposable, then you can have an issue. Very interesting Mishnah Berurah. The Mishnah Berurah says, but if you're going to tie some kind of a rag over a bleeding cut, you have to wash the blood off first. Why? So that you should not be dyeing the cloth red using your blood, and be over on the Isser of Tzaveh. Say, the Paiskim, you can ask me now, okay, so Rabbi Weiss, if I get a cut in Shabbos, I have to make sure to wash the blood off before I put a Band-Aid on, because otherwise a big Tzaveh, the Band-Aid. Paiskim say, no, a Band-Aid, no one's going to look and say, oh, you're dyeing the Band-Aid. No, Band-Aid is there to protect a cut. Yes, it's going to get dirty. Other Paiskim also say, Tzaveh? This is not Tzaveh. Tzaveh is when you dye something to make it nice. This is lichluch. This is getting something dirty. Getting something dirty is not Tzaveh. So there's a lot of talk about this. It's the rice, it's the Rabbanon. Yen again, not again. Okay. Says the Mishnah is cut in Kuf Tes. Mutter Lotzeis. So, is cut in Kuf Tes. You're allowed to go out with this coin tied to your foot. V'davka b'shakosher esamatpeil pieces ragli mi ba'yoyim be'ez a smartut l'choshev bottle. You're only allowed to go out with this coin tied to your foot if you tied it onto your foot before Shabbos started, and you did it with a disposable piece of cloth, a rag, which is on choshev, and therefore it's bottle to you. Avalim kosher oz b'davar shu choshev also losis b'Shabbos v'chanal b'sif Chav Beis, where we spoke about the bandage. Okay, we're going to stop over here. We'll continue next time with Sif Chav Tes. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. This list of Limud HaTorah should be Megan on Gans Klai Yisrael. The Baruch Shem should send Yeshua's, Refuah's, Parnasah, Sheduchim, Tol, all they need. We should be there to see the B'ez Kol Tzedek, B'mher V'Yameinu. Amen. Be well.